Tanshi, and welcome back to the Sickle and Sash podcast. I'm Josh McKenna, and I live on the ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations in so-called Vancouver, BC. I'm Métis. My family's roots run deep in Treaty 1 territory of the Red River Valley in Manitoba. My family names include Carrier, Hamlin, Vandal, Parenteau, Landry, Laurence, McGillivray, and the unnamed Cree and Soto women who populate my family tree. Today, our guest is Makwa. Pengee Makade Makwa Ikwe is currently residing on the Kwungan territory, but is originally from Fort Albany First Nations in Northern Ontario. Makwa? Yeah. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, I was raised in Anishinaabe territory, like in and around Thunder Bay. I spent most of my life there up until about 21, and then I moved to Winnipeg for a little while. I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I spent maybe a year there, and then I ended up coming across country to BC for... The reason I came out here was actually for activism. So I came out here right away to go up to Wet'suwet'en, and then I absolutely fell in love. I went back to Winnipeg for 16 days and then moved back.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. It's I've been looking forward to having you on the show, and yeah, I mean, it's been something we've been talking about for a while, doing tattooing on the show, so it's going to be like probably the most different episode. Yeah, so Makwa, you're OjiCree, but I remember you telling me the first time that we met that you also have a bit of Métis in you. So I believe you're going to be the first mixed Indigenous person that we've had on the show, so we're branching out.
That's great.
So yeah, Makwa and I, we first met at Indigenous Fashion Week 2023.
Last year? No, we're in 2025 now. Yeah, 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. And you were just like tattooing out in the lobby.
I was rogue tattooing is what they ended up calling it.
Yeah.
I didn't end up having a vendor table or paying vendor fees or doing. I just kind of showed up, and the people just started, "Hey, Makwa, you got your gear on you? Like, let's do some tattoo work." I'm all right, sure. What else am I gonna do for the next few hours? I mean, the first night I watched the show, which was really amazing, and then the days after that I kept going, everyone just kept asking me for more and more tattoo work. So I ended up tattooing most of the vendors there. Yeah. And then you squeezed your way in.
Yeah. I remember me and my sister harassed you all night. We were like, we want to get tattooed.
I couldn't turn you away at that point. Like, you were invested.
Yeah. Because, like, you're walking around, like, the Queen Elizabeth Theatre in downtown Vancouver, and, like, someone's, like, doing hand poke tattoos. Like, how can you not?
No, 100%. I'd have chased them down, too.
So today we're going to be talking about traditional tattooing, what that means for kind of cultural revitalization, but also, like, as an act of resistance. Kind of draw that into kind of classic themes of this show of, like, the inherently intertwined nature of like our culture and politics. And then I thought we'd get into as well, you know, you've done some land defense. You've also done tattooing alongside land defense actions, which is pretty sweet. So we'll get into all that. But right off the bat, let's talk about what you're going to be tattooing on me today while we record. So we're going to be essentially doing like a reverse hot ones. In this case, we'll all kind of be on the hot seat, like feeling the pain, and you'll just be chilling, answering questions.
I'm down with that.
So we talked a bit about before what we're going to tattoo. And your suggestion was earth lines. So for the uninitiated, can you kind of explain what those are?
Well, today I'm just going to do one around your wrist, whichever wrist that you prefer. I think you're right-handed, eh? Let's do your right then, if you can.
Sure.
It's essentially it's to help ground you. Like, a lot of people I know will actually get two for balance.
Yep.
One of my best friend Chug, I did one on her one foot, and for the next couple of weeks she felt like she was walking like around in circles. She felt so off balance, so I might end up coming back and having to do the other side for you.
Yeah.
But they're protection bands, you know, for protection in this life and in the next. And for you to, you know, it's a help to connect you to Creator, a good reminder when you look at it. Like, that's a lot of our ancestors did a lot of bands.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to make this happen today. Yeah, you've tattooed me a couple times before. I think first time you tattooed me to my fingers, and then gave me the little buffalo on the back of my arm here, and then most recently, I popped over to the island, and Makwa gave me this like big script. First tattoo I got from you with a machine as well. Big Otipa Misawak across my chest here. So that was pretty sweet. But yeah, let's get right into it, and then we can talk a bit more about how you got into tattooing in the first place and traditional tattooing and what that journey was like for you. So
Sounds good.
yeah, let's get started.
Cool.
So yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the technique that you use. So you do hand poke. So why do you do hand poke as opposed to machine work? I know you do both, but you do more of your traditional stuff hand poke.
100%. I started tattooing with hand poke, and it was something that kind of came upon by accident. Like, it wasn't anything I ever intended to become like a lifelong journey for me. It was just, me and a couple friends just messing around doing stick and poke like every other native kid does on the res, right? And then once I actually got back from Wet'suwet'en, I felt called for markings. Like, I needed my face marked. And so, like, we'll get into that too later on. So I tattooed my own face, not knowing really what I was doing, but that I was called to these specific lines, these specific markings for, like, to mark my journey, right? And so it ended up, I had another friend of mine come to me and be like, "Hey, I need you to do my markings." I'm like, I don't know anything about this. Like, this is so new, it's such a new thing for me. Like, I feel like I have a lot of learning to do before I can mark your face. And they're like, "No, like, you're who I feel the need to do it." And so they actually traveled from Toronto to BC to have me tattoo their face. And I felt like I wasn't worthy of doing such a thing, right? Like, I had so much more knowledge to gain and so much more ceremony to go through. But, like, that was what kind of put me into that position, right? Into actually forcing me into that role that I knew I should be filling anyways. I was just scared to. And so they came over, and it took me hours. I was terrified doing it. But, like, they turned out beautiful. We did them outside, just laid them on a blanket on the ground, and we had, we sang, we drummed, we ate, we feasted. Like, it was an amazing experience. And my mom ended up getting her face tattooed by me in the same day. So, like, it was definitely the start of my life. Give me your arm.
It's really interesting. So it's a bit of a mix of, like, kind of like learning from experience, and then also I imagine, like, evaluating, like, when you're, like, ready to do something too. Like, how do you kind of manage that balance? Because, like, you've obviously come a long way in your, like, tattooing journey, and you've, like, come a long way since the, like, first, like, bit of tattooing that you did. Like,
100%.
Has there ever been times where you've, like, not felt ready to do, like, a certain kind of marking that you've, like,
there's
held
been a
off
lot
on?
of times I've straight up turned people down because, like, this isn't the right time, it's not the right place, and it's not the right marking. Like, we, to give someone the wrong marking or in the wrong headspace could do detrimental things to their life. So, like, the things that, like, someone wants aesthetically on their face, or especially if they're a very spiritual person, could turn out really bad in my opinion or in my experience, right? So, like, their tattoos and markings are medicine, and if you do it in a wrong or not a good way, it'll prove to be such, right? So that's even when I'm in a bad headspace, or, like, if I'm going through depression, or, just not having a really good day, I won't do it. Because that's something that's put on someone forever. You almost encase that energy, and that's not okay to share that with somebody else, I think, when it's not their fault, not their problem. It's a big thing to put on somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing goes for, like, a lot of our art practices. Like, even the woman that I've learned the most from in terms of beading, Métis woman named Lisa Shepherd, like, she even talks about that as well. Like, how sometimes, like, you just need to take a break from beading. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, especially if you're doing it for someone else in a bad headspace, or, like, when someone passes. Like, she had someone, I recall her telling us a story about someone close to her passing, and just needing to take a break from beading for a few months, and
100%.
at least beading for other people. She said, you can bead for yourself, but, like, if it's just something to help you, but then that beating stays with you.
No, absolutely. And like there's definitely, when it comes to that kind of artwork, being angry and beating sometimes, like it's a way to express yourself, right? You can put those feelings into something, but then to give that to somebody else isn't like, keep that for yourself. It did have a means and it was a good medium, but that's your energy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need you to stand up with me if you don't mind.
For sure.
But like hand poking came from, way back when our ancestors started needing to have that medicine and be able to mark their stories and who they were, especially for identity reasons, right? And so with, when that got taken away from us, like it was absolutely detrimental. Like there were so many stories that were lost, and like, I wasn't there. I couldn't tell you of the exact things that it cost people, but it's such a connection now to our ancestors and who we are that to be able to tattoo it's probably one of the most important things in the world to me now. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just tattooing, like it's not just putting art, like you're marking your skin, right? And you're marking who you are, what you stand for. And I don't think there's anything quite as powerful as that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me a bit more about that journey from like initially just kind of like messing around with the hand poke to like it becoming such an important part of your life.
I think after I started with like face tattoos, right, and face markings and those spiritual ancestral markings, that's when it really like dug its claws into me of like, this is who you are and this is what you need to share with the world. And if you don't, then you're not fulfilling what you're here for. I think everyone was put in this earth for a reason, and we all have a job to do and a role to play. And that's, some people float around doing lots of different things their whole life, right? But that was still part of our role and part of our journey. So, to not do those things, the things that you're called to most, that's, I don't know, I just think your life isn't going to be as fulfilled. And like, you're taking that away from other people too, when you're like, if you're put in a healer role, right? Like I'm sorry, but that's not your job. Yeah. You have to take care of other people, whether you want to or not. Like, and there is time to take for yourself as well. You can't fill other people's cups if yours is empty. And it's the same thing I feel about tattooing. I have to take good care of myself, even for just contemporary tattooing, because that's, on somebody forever. And if I don't take care of myself, that would be really irresponsible of me.
So then tell me a bit more about the technique you use, because a lot of people, when they decide to get into tattooing more full on, tend to prefer working with a machine.
Honestly, patience. So much patience, because it's one dot at a time, like one tiny prayer at a time, as you fulfill the medicine that's meant to be on somebody's skin. But yeah, it's just you're pushing in the needle and you're flicking the ink underneath the skin, essentially, like wiping it off under the skin. It's just like a lot more efficient than going in and out like a tattoo machine would, that goes way faster than anybody could ever actually push a needle into someone's skin. But there's lots of different ways of traditionally tattooing. There's tap tattoos, and there's skin stitching, and there's hand poke.
Have you ever tried any of those other like traditional techniques?
No, I haven't.
Do you think you ever will?
Yeah, I definitely will. I want to know everything there is to know about tattooing in every ancestral sense. Like, I'd love to go to the Philippines, and there's a beautiful woman there that's in her hundreds that's still tattooing to this day, and she gets them to go into the bush and get her supplies, and then she picks the tattoo, and like, it's, to be that like matriarchally powerful would be amazing.
Totally. You've had skin stitch done before, right?
Absolutely.
So how does that like differ in like the feeling of getting it as opposed to?
It hurt. It really hurt. Like,
Yeah.
It was the sensation of like when you were a little kid and you used to put like a pin in your thumb and you'd run around with it sticking out on both sides, thinking it was all gross and freaking people out with it. It was essentially like kind of the same thing, But
yes, the universal experience of stabbing yourself with a pin and freaking people out with it.
But it's accurate. It's the best way I can describe it to other people, because you're going through like your actual, like your arm skin or something like that, except there's a lot more nerves in that kind of skin, and it hurts. It's a good pinch. But and then like you start threading through your skin, but when I got it done, it didn't hurt. It was just like I was so emotional and so overwhelmed for the fact that I was getting a tattoo from Dion. Like that was pretty cool in by itself.
Yeah.
And then to have it done in such a ancient way was super emotional for me.
Yeah, actually, can you talk a bit more about that? Because like for those who don't know who he is, like tell us who Dion is. Like he's quite a big deal in the world of Indigenous tattooing.
He's definitely been he's taught me a lot of things, even in just a short amount of time that I've been able to spend face to face with him. But he's revitalized so much of the different ways of tattooing between skin stitching and hand poke tattooing. He's facilitated a lot of workshops to be able to create traditional practitioners across Turtle Island, which nobody else has done that. And then just like the continued workshops and programs that he puts on for people, or like the, gatherings and stuff like that he facilitates, he does amazing work in the community. I'm very grateful for him. I think that looks pretty straight. What do you think?
Looks great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay.
And you were also on Dion's podcast a little while ago.
Yeah.
Right? How was that?
It was really cool to be able to sit and talk to someone who was in like the same mind space as you, and that was, doing tattoos for a reason other than contemporary, right? Like not a lot of people understand the spiritual meaning and the journey behind traditional tattooing. Mm-hmm. So it was really awesome to be able to share that space with them. And it's the same with like just being able to share that kind of space with other traditional tattoo artists as well. Like they get it, and they're there for the same reason you are. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we all had a role in this life, right? So I think it's pretty cool to be, you really bond with those people that you're sharing a role with. Mm-hmm. And you can teach each other so many different things. I love getting to participate in things like that.
Mm-hmm. So aside from Dion, like who else have you learned from? Like how did you kind of develop a knowledge of like proper protocol around doing traditional tattoos?
Kanahus Manuel. I spent some time out in Tiny House Warriors, and she ended up tattooing the bear claws around my neck. And she talked to me a lot about like the technique around hand poke. Not so much protocol, but definitely a lot of technique and like appreciating your time. Because that's, especially when you're not that confident, or you're just coming out of trauma and a lot of those things, you don't know your worth, right? You don't appreciate your time for what it should be. Mm-hmm. And then you're just kind of dishing out to everybody.
Yeah.
But as far as protocols go, I've asked a lot of questions to Isaac Murdoch. He's definitely been a prevalent person in my life through stories and listening to him speak, or actually having good phone calls with him about what he thinks about I should do in this sense, like especially when it came to the line between like contemporary and traditional, or like where you draw the line between money and trade or things like that, right? Mm-hmm. But other than that, like it's just been a lot of knowledge through elders, asking questions, going through ceremony, my peers who tattoo as well. It's just an accumulation of people that I've been lucky enough to get to know over the years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ready?
Let's do it. So for people who've watched the previous episodes of this show as well, Isaac Murdoch might sound familiar, and he runs the Ottoman Collective with Christy Belcourt, last episode's guest. So we were talking about Christy before we started recording too, because you said you had some of her work tattooed on you, right?
Yeah, I have a lot of the Ojibwe creation story that was redone by Christy and Isaac. Well, not redone, but like put into pictures and words, right? Mm-hmm. So I went through a lot of their storybooks and just kind of I wanted to keep that with me to be able to share that with the next generation as well. Because I'm not just going to carry around a book in my backpack. But if you carry it on your skin, you know, you get to have those stories forever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right off the bat, this is like the least painful tattoo you've given me so far.
Really?
The finger retouch was probably the worst tattoo pain I've ever felt in my life.
Oh, absolutely. 'Cause you're going over or scar tissue, right? So your touch-ups aren't always fun, and fingers by themselves are awful.
It also like didn't help that I didn't really eat before that. So yeah, to paint a picture for those watching, I went to go get my retouch done just down the street from my house when Makwa was here at just over a year ago at a like indigenous like art market that was like in the like upstairs of a Legion on Commercial Drive. And I went there and you were touching at my fingers and I was like bleeding profusely. So you like finished with me and I was like, felt like I was almost ready to pass out. And I'm just walking around this market with my hands up, like I'm trying to pay respect to someone, but I'm just dripping blood. And it's like, there's all these like sweet old native ladies and they're like, are you okay? Like,
no, I'm not okay. I'm giving my offerings right now. I just probably shouldn't do it around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Mm. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of what the practice of traditional tattooing is like in the like current socio-political landscape, you know, like tattooing, given the context that like, you know, putting our traditional markings on our bodies and just engaging in traditional tattoo practices at all was, for the most part, outlawed for so long. Like, what does it mean as a means of cultural revitalization, but also resistance today?
Well, I can speak for how I feel about it. Everyone's going to put markings on their bodies for all different reasons, right? Like whether it's, you know, to represent who you are, like I talked about a little bit before, or to like for specifically medicine, right? Like they used to put markings on like their temples when they had major migraines, or like over their cheeks when they had toothaches, like, and they're very adamant that these were things that would ward off, you know, pain, right? And it's whether it be acupressure or, you know, actual shamanic magic, you know, it helped them, right? And cultural indigenous magic is actually like I felt it, and it's one of the most amazing feelings that you can, like, that you're graced with, right? A lot of it definitely has been moments of tattooing and tattooing faces, and especially like when two spirits are able to really see each other, it's hard to even put into words, right? It's definitely a beautiful experience that I've been grateful to be a part of quite a few times. But as far as like political goes, people definitely started looking at me differently after I tattooed my face, and I'm a lot lighter skinned, so it's not, some people will straight up ask me like, are you Inuit? And I've had to argue with people. I'm like, no, I'm not, but only Inuits do that. I'm like, well, you need to educate yourself a little bit, because it's across, you know, the world that Indigenous people have been putting tattoos on their body in whatever shape, way, or form, right? But my reason for doing mine was like when I came back from Wet'suwet'en, it was such a, like, I had to put them there. I needed to show the world who I was, what I stood for, who my family was. And I have my grandma's ashes in my kokum.
Oh, wow.
And so she used to always tell me, like, Makwa, you're going to move mountains when you're older. Okay, Granny. But when I got older, I'm like, you know what, Granny, you're going to move those mountains with me, whether you like it or not. You had one leg, but you were strong. And so after I did that, my mom was actually a little bit, like, she was appalled but excited at the same time, just to know that we kind of separated Granny a little bit. But we're going to put hers in my mom's markings that I'll be doing when I get home too.
Wow.
I'm really excited to do those. And that's like when you asked about like not being the right time, right? You know, I've been putting those off forever because both me and her have been just like struggling emotionally together. And so obviously just not a good time to be, memorializing those things, right? And keeping it.
It's interesting that you say that about the Indigenous magic too, because season 1 of this show premiered for the first time a few months ago. And on the very first episode, some guy wrote like an essay in the comments with the thesis being, you people need to get over this and stop thinking that you're magical warriors against colonialism. But it sounds like you would counter with the fact that maybe we are.
100%. 100%. I mean, who else is fighting it? Like we're all on the front lines of doing these things, whether it's actually being out in the bush, stopping traffic on highways, doing rallies, doing marches. Like we all have our own ways of, showing the world. They're telling the world to stop and showing them what actually matters. Right? But I don't know, at this point it's quite a losing battle, and it's sad. Like the little wins that we do have though, they surprise me because it's such a monster colonialism. And it just feels like fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
All the time. And that's why like my even just traditional tattooing just feels like an act of I have something that against you. Mm-hmm. Like, that you can never take away from me ever again.
Yeah.
Like when they've just continuously taken so much. This is mine. This is ours. Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely I'll never stop sharing it for the rest of my life, and there's nothing nobody can do.
Yeah. There's a song based around a concept that I relate to a lot now, and I think the original concept was taken from something like J.R.R. Tolkien wrote. Yeah, I know, like Lord of the Rings guy. Yeah. So, but it was something about like the commitment to like fighting a long defeat. So like even when it feels like it's like a long defeat, it's like that kind of energy that you bring to it to just like keep fighting it no matter what. Because I don't know, we never know what the future holds.
That's very true. Yeah, even when you feel like there's no hope, make it. Keep it going, because that inspires other people to keep going too, and then maybe one day we will get somewhere. I mean, that's what we all pray for, right?
So, you just mentioned now, and you told me a bit before about how like having markings on your face can result in some stigmatization. What went into that for like that decision for you? Like, were you thinking that like that might happen? Was it really anything that you cared about? Like,
I didn't think about it at all. And like I did my markings about 5 years ago, so it was still like there was still few and far between, right? Like in the last few years, a lot of people have been getting their markings, which is absolutely beautiful. Because it just means our culture is coming back. Our culture is igniting again, right? And being able to spread so much deeply across Turtle Island, which is beautiful. But no, when I did my markings, I never even thought about people are going to look at me differently, or who's going to question me or anything like that. And actually, right after I did them, I was walking downtown Winnipeg, and I had this group of, I don't know, there's probably 7 guys that were walking towards me, and it was getting pretty dark out. I think I was coming back from the mail or something. And, especially when you get a new tattoo, you kind of forget it's there, right? Like, but I felt good still, but especially something on your face. Like you're not seeing it, you're not looking in a mirror, but they all walked past me except one guy. He stepped out of the crowd and stepped in front of me. So I had nowhere to go. And I was like, my heart, when your heart drops into your stomach, that's exactly how I felt. And he just locked eyes with me, and he ran his finger down his own shin, and then kind of cocked his head and stared at me, and then gave me a couple nods, stepped back with his friends, and kept walking. And it was just like it was a validation of what I'd just done, even if it was from, a complete stranger. But at the same time, it also scared me. It gave me all of those feelings of like, should I have done this? The self-questioning, right? But I'm grateful that happened.
Yeah.
as far as it goes with like other people, you know, it's when I've put markings on people's faces and then they look in the mirror. And it was kind of something I touched about the podcast that I just did. I was just on one centered around joy and the joy that tattooing brings to me. And that was the epitome of it. When they look in the mirror and they realize this is what I should look like. They were meant to be there the whole time. Like, so you don't even think about how other people are going to react to you or what your family's going to think. It's just, this is, you know, your spirit's just so happy because you and your ancestors, you know, whooping and cheering behind you, because that's exactly how you should have looked the whole time, being able to represent them through you as well, and being able to hold who you are so close to you that your insides match your outsides.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It does make you think a lot about like why certain types of tattooing is more stigmatized than others, right? Because one thing that's just like, I feel like a little bit ingrained in like the larger like North American culture is like, I feel like tattoos for a long time period were looked down upon.
100%.
But then still it's kind of like, even if it's jokingly, like quite often the thing is like, you know, people will look at my tattoos or something like that and be like, okay, yeah, well, they're all right. Just don't ever do the face. Don't ever do the face. And they don't mean that in any sort of way where they're trying to discourage me from any sort of traditional markings or anything like that. But it's just this kind of like gut reaction where people are like, well, just keep it below the neck, you know, like.
I get it all the time, especially like being at the gym. And so like so many of my tattoos are exposed. I've had so much of like, you know, seniors and the elderly come up to me, and one guy actually, it was really it took me by surprise, and he came up to me and he said, have you heard this song? I think the song was called the Tattooed Lady. And I'm like, no, I haven't. He's like, can I sing it for you? I said, sure. I'm just getting ready to do my next set on the bench press, and I have this, you know, elderly man singing me a song in the middle of the gym.
Hopefully it goes hard. Like, it's like gonna help that bench press.
I wasn't really sure what to do with it for the rest of the day, but like after he finished singing, you know, that was beautiful. My next response was, I wish someone would write a song about me. But yeah, I never had that one before. I've definitely had a lot of older ladies coming up to me and being, you know, why do you have your face tattooed? Why would you tattoo something so beautiful? Why would you cover that up? Or, you know, things like that. Or having people say to me, you're hiding yourself with your tattoos, or what are you running from, or things like that. Like, I'm not trying to hide or mask who I am. I'm trying to show you who I am. You know, I'm being, like I said, being able to match my insides on my outsides. Yeah. And that's just, it's not understood very often. And even when I try to explain that to, you know, last generations past, it's just, I don't think they'll ever understand, because they weren't a part of it, right? They aren't a part of that resistance. They aren't a part of those, you know, colonial genocidal feelings, right? Of having things taken away from you.
Yeah. When you say like generations past, do you mean like you kind of get that from like older Indigenous people as well?
Not so much Indigenous people. Yeah. It's mostly, well, it's everybody else but Indigenous people, because it's not an educated topic, right? So elders understand, because some do if they're able, like especially ones that were into 60 scoop and that were taken away from, you know, a lot of their connection, like. And I'm always happy to have, you know, sit down and have a conversation with them about it, because usually then that's what they want to do. Like, they want to go down that road now with me and be able to get their markings and be able to, you know, reconnect with what they lost, right? But no, it's mostly not usually Indigenous people though.
I spoke a little soon about this tattoo. This side is definitely worse than the top of my wrist.
I could have told you that.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'll let you have it.
So, yeah, tell me a little bit more about the journey to get traditional markings, because I've heard you talk about before, like kind of discouraging against people who purely see them as like something aesthetic, or people who just kind of see a picture of something and they're like, that looks cool, I want to get that too. Like there's a lot more that goes into it as it like beyond just like, getting lines on my cheekbones would be sweet, right?
100%. They're usually, like when people come to me and ask me, oh, how do I get my markings? Like there have been times that I've dreamt about them and then been able to gift those to somebody else. But usually I'm not that connected with people, right? Like that's something of your own journey and you need to figure that, you need to hash that out with your ancestors, right? And it's my first go-to is, get some tobacco, go put it outside, go for a walk, go find something that you're like, that's a beautiful place. This is, worthy of some tobacco, right? And, and if it doesn't come to you, then you're going to need to work a little bit harder. You need to go fast, go out into the bush for a little bit, even if it's just 24 hours, like go put your feet in some soil and hug some trees, right? Like go reconnect yourself if it's not coming to you that easily. Go to sweat lodge, go give some tobacco to an elder. Like you need to kind of use your resources that are around you. If you have any. Some people aren't so lucky, but other than that, like you got to work through it with your own connection with Creator, because that's not always for me to be able to decide that for you.
And you said you've turned people down before.
100%. Like
what has been that like feeling that you get where you're like, I just don't think it's the time or the right marking?
There's just a feeling that comes from somebody when they're so sure about something that they need, right? Like it's like asking me for a piece of toast when you haven't eaten for 3 days. Like I need this. And with people that come to me with just aesthetics, I say, I want this. But like you have to be able to differentiate between, and also myself, like I have to differentiate between my own ego and spirit, right? Yeah. Like it's, do I want or do I need this? And you just got to learn to read people and ask questions, right? Yeah. You'll usually get that answer quite quickly.
Well, yeah, I remember the first time you tattooed me when you did my fingers. I think it was kind of a game time decision. I was like, could we do something on my fingers? And then we had a discussion about where I'm from, where my family comes from, and what you could actually put on my fingers. And of course we have, we share a little bit of like swampy Cree heritage.
Yes.
And that's where the finger lines came from. It was kind of an interesting moment because I didn't go into that with a specific thing in mind that I was asking you for. It was just kind of a discussion and like a little get to know each other moment,
Yeah, and those are like the really obvious moments of like Indigenous magic where, our spirits are able to have that conversation outside of just me and you having that conversation.
And things are just gonna poof, there they are, right? Or there it is. And sometimes it's that easy, but sometimes you got to put some work into it.
Yeah.
It's nice when it's that easy though.
So I'm thinking let's pivot and get into the capitalization of the art world a bit and talk about how that affects like any artistic practice, but in this case tattooing. I remember you telling me that when I was first getting tattooed by you, I think I was like, oh, do you take e-transfer? And you were like, no bank account. You need to go get cash and give me cash. I don't want any traditional stuff getting tracked. I don't have a bank account. Like, so obviously like you have some feelings about that. So tell me a bit more about that.
Just a lot of things don't need to be shared with the government. Frankly, they've, like I said before, they've taken enough from us and the little bit that we do get to survive on. I don't know. I feel like that's just like them coming over and putting their hand in my salmon jar and taking a piece of salmon from me too. Like, it's not for them and it's never going to be for them. They've already taken our means of survival, right? Like, we're not able to do a lot of the things that we were once able to do in order to be able to live a traditional lifestyle, right? Like besides, polluting our waters, the lack of animals that are around now, like them taking over our traditional lands. Like, so if I need to do some tattoo work to feed my family, they don't get that either.
Are there ever times where you like don't feel like it's like the right, like appropriate to have like a exchange of money for
100%. Like when it comes to like spiritual markings, like if you went out and you did a fast or you were at ceremony and, you know, your ancestors gifted you some markings and you brought those to me, like I would expect a change of hands of tobacco and a gift of some sort, you know, in compensation for my time and the medicine I'm about to give you. Like, but even if you brought me, you know, some cans of salmon. I've tattooed someone for a cigarette.
Is that what you meant by an exchange of tobacco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's a pouch of tobacco like you gave me before we started tattooing, like any kind, even like a bundle of sage, like just some sort of form of, you know, offering.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, some things are just too sacred to ever involve colonialism, right?
Yeah.
How's it feeling?
Not bad. I'm getting a little numb to it. So
Yeah?
it's
Okay, cool.
you know. The worst thing about like hand poke though, it's just the way it just scoops, you know. Like that you never stop feeling.
100%. I've been tattooing my stomach for the last little bit. And I got like 16 hours into this bear on my stomach. And like by hour 5, you know, the sound really starts to get to you.
The sound of that needle snapping through your skin.
100%.
Yeah.
And like the hyper focus on what you're doing. Like it's such a, you know, an amazing thing to be able to gift yourself with these sorts of markings, right? Like, and a lot of us used to do that.
Yeah.
But after a while, it definitely gets cringy.
I mean, I've only done it once and it was small, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that got my arm there. Yeah, I can't imagine doing the whole stomach.
No, and it's the same thing with like even machine tattooing. Once I'm hyper focused, I'm not discouraging anyone from getting tattoos by any means. But as an artist, hyper focusing for so long and watching the needle go through the skin and knowing exactly that it's pulverizing a line through your skin, it gets to you after a minute or two.
That's gonna be the clickbait thumbnail of this one. Don't get tattoos. It's just a picture of you on the front.